You can feel it now, can't you? The stirring that begins as a soft ache, like a quiet murmur in the depths of your chest that you once called restlessness. But this is no ordinary longing, no passing curiosity you can dismiss with distractions or the busyness of your familiar routines. This is the call of something older than your doubts and stronger than your excuses. It begins before dawn sometimes, when the world is still asleep and your heart is wide awake. Pulsing with questions you're not ready to answer, questions that press against the edges of your old life, reminding you that you were never meant to stay hidden among the predictable. You were not made to settle for simply being tolerated. It's the stirring that arrives uninvited, the knowing that refuses to stay buried under your performance of normalcy. You catch glimpses of it in the way your spirit pulls away from the noise you used to crave, in how your bones feel heavier each time you pretend to belong in rooms your soul has already abandoned. You tell yourself you should be grateful, that you should be satisfied, but there's a truth humming beneath every forced smile, vibrating through every tired justification. You are not where you are meant to be anymore. And though you try to hush this voice, to bury it beneath the comfort of old attachments and the predictability of repetition, it grows louder every time you deny it. The stirring does not negotiate. It does not shrink back because you're afraid. It does not soften its message because you're worried about disappointing the people who depend on your compliance. It simply waits, pulsing in your chest, until you are ready to acknowledge it for what it is, the first sign that God is pulling you away. In these early moments, you may still believe you can ignore it, that you can negotiate with destiny to stay where it's comfortable. But something has shifted too deeply to be reversed. You sense it in the way your laughter sometimes catches in your throat, in how you feel lonelier in crowded places than you ever did alone. The stirring makes you aware of everything you've been pretending not to notice, the shallow conversations, the unspoken resentments, the hollowness beneath all the performing. It will tempt you to think you're being ungrateful or selfish, that you're imagining problems where there are none. But look closer. You'll see that the energy you used to pour into fitting in has been quietly redirected toward finding your true place. And no matter how hard you try to convince yourself that you can stay small and silent, the truth keeps rising, breaking the surface of your denial. You were made for more. At first, this knowing feels inconvenient. It disrupts your sense of order and makes you question everything you once trusted. You'll feel the urge to cling tighter to what is familiar, to hold fast to the people who once defined you. You'll want to prove to yourself that you can still find peace in the places that once sheltered you. But the stirring is not interested in your comfort. It is here for your liberation. It does not judge your fear or your hesitation. It only asks you to be honest about them, to look yourself in the eye and admit what you already sense: you are outgrowing your old life. And as much as you want to pretend otherwise, nothing you do can reverse this expansion. You will notice it in small ways. First, a sigh you can't explain, a heaviness in your chest when you walk into a room, a sudden longing for spaces you haven't yet seen. You will feel it in your body, the tightness in your shoulders, the fatigue that follows every conversation where you must compress yourself to be accepted. You will feel it in your mind, the impatience with small talk, the ache for something deeper, truer, freer. This is not the beginning of an ending. This is the beginning of a beginning, a sacred unraveling that must occur before you can step fully into the purpose waiting for you. The stirring is God's invitation to let go of the illusion that safety is the same as alignment. When you feel it, you will try to find reasons to explain it away. Maybe you'll blame it on stress or burnout. Maybe you'll tell yourself that you're just tired or moody. But the stirring is more persistent than that. It will not be pacified by your rationalizations. It is a compass, and it is already locked onto the direction you are meant to travel. The longer you deny it, the louder it becomes, until finally, you understand this is not something you can negotiate with. You cannot compromise with destiny. You can only surrender to it. And in that surrender, you will discover a deeper peace than you have ever known. Not the fragile peace of fitting in, but the unshakable peace of belonging to yourself. This is where the journey begins. The moment you stop trying to muffle the stirring and dare to listen. The moment you allow yourself to be honest about what you feel. The moment you admit you are being called away. The stirring is no longer content to whisper. It has gathered strength in the quiet hours and now beats like a drum against the hollow walls of your old life. You feel it when you wake, before your eyes even open. An unnamed urgency pressing against your ribs, a holy discontent, impossible to disguise or dismiss. You once thought discomfort was a sign you were failing somehow, that if you just tried harder to appreciate what you had, the friction would ease. But this is not the discomfort of ingratitude. This is the discomfort of growth. The ache of a spirit that has realized it cannot keep shrinking to fit spaces that never honored its full measure. At first, you try to soothe it by clinging tighter to routines, by reminding yourself of all the reasons you should stay. You list them in your head like a litany. These are good people. This is a good place. I have so much here to be thankful for. But the stirring is unimpressed by your attempts to reason with it. It is not here to negotiate the terms of your containment. It is here to call you out of it. The holy discontent seeps into everything. It changes how you hear the familiar voices around you. Conversations you once found comforting now feel flat, like echoes of a language your spirit no longer speaks. Laughter you used to share feels strangely distant, as if you're watching yourself participate in someone else's story. You look around and realize you've been living as a guest in your own life, performing belonging rather than inhabiting it. It is a lonely revelation. You will be tempted to silence it by staying busy, by overcommitting, by distracting yourself with noise. But no matter how many obligations you pile on top of it, no matter how many affirmations you repeat, the truth remains you cannot unknow what you now know. You are no longer content to play small. The holy discontent does not arrive to punish you. It arrives because you are ready. Because your spirit has matured to a point where the old comforts can no longer nourish you. What once felt like home has become too quiet, too predictable, too small for the expanse you are becoming. And this awareness is as liberating as it is terrifying. You sense that everything around you can feel the shift, to the way you no longer rush to fill the silence. The way your eyes have stopped searching for approval in familiar place. The holy discontent is not just yours. It radiates outward, disrupting the delicate balance of old dynamics. People who once relied on your predictable softness begin to notice the edges of your new boundaries. They sense your absence even while you are still sitting beside them. It is in these moments that the doubt will come. It will whisper that you are selfish for wanting more, that you are ungrateful for daring to outgrow the life that once kept you safe. But listen carefully, safety is not the same as purpose. You were not created merely to be safe. You were created to become, and becoming is never a tidy process. It requires the courage to question what you have been taught to revere, the courage to look at the life you have built and admit, with brutal compassion, that it no longer fits. The holy discontent will test your loyalty to your own soul. It will ask you to choose between the familiarity of the known and the mystery of the possible. It will ask you to trust that God is not cruel, that he does not stir your spirit for sport, that he only disrupts what is no longer aligned with who you are becoming. This is why the old spaces feel so tight now, why you feel like an imposter in the roles you used to inhabit effortlessly. It's not because you are broken. It's because your spirit is too alive to pretend anymore. And if you dare to be honest, you'll see this discontent for what it truly is, an invitation. An invitation to step into the fullness you were always meant to claim. An invitation to stop apologizing for the size of your spirit. An invitation to trust that you do not have to earn your freedom, you were born with it. Let yourself feel the ache. Let it break your attachment to what is safe but stagnant. Let it burn away every lie you've told yourself about why you must stay small. You may not know yet where this path will lead. You may not have a clear vision of what comes next. But you know, with a certainty that transcends reason, that you cannot stay here. The holy discontent is your sign that the time has come to move, to step away from the scripts that kept you hidden, to release the identities that demanded your silence. And even though you will feel fear of disappointing others, fear of stepping into the unknown, fear of losing the acceptance you worked so hard to maintain, trust that this is sacred fear. The kind of fear that arises when you stand at the threshold of your destiny. It is a good fear, a necessary fear, a fear that means you are finally alive to your own possibility. So don't rush to smother it. Don't hurry to explain it away. Let the holy discontent have its place. Let it teach you where you no longer belong. Let it show you what you can no longer pretend to be. Because when you honor it, you honor God's work in you, and you honor the truth you were never meant to stay where you started. You begin to notice it in their eyes before you ever say a word, a flicker of confusion, a question they don't voice but you can feel hanging heavy in the space between you. They sense your spirit withdrawing, the same way animals sense a shift in the weather before the storm arrives. It's subtle at first, a hesitation in their tone, a pause when they look at you, as if trying to locate the person they remember. But you are already somewhere else. Your energy has started to drift beyond the borders of your old life, and they can feel the absence of your former compliance. This is what no one tells you about growth. You don't have to announce your departure. Your frequency declares it for you. Even when your body stays in the same chair, your presence no longer bends itself to fit the shape of their expectations. Your laughter doesn't come as easily when the conversation circles the same old stories. Your eyes don't light up at the same compliments. And though you try to pretend, nothing has changed. Everything has. Everything. They feel it when you stop volunteering to hold the emotional weight of the room. When you no longer rush to smooth over tension or fill awkward silences. When you don't laugh at jokes that never truly felt kind. Your refusal to shrink becomes its own kind of declaration. Your unwillingness to pretend becomes a quiet revolution. Some will respond with curiosity. They will lean in, intrigued by the steadiness in your gaze, the new calm in your silence. They will sense that you are no longer performing, and they will respect the truth of it. But others will grow uneasy. They will feel the distance without understanding it, and in their confusion, they may try to pull you back into the roles you once played. They will ask questions that are really disguised. Please, are you okay? You seem different. Is something wrong? But beneath the surface, the question is simpler. Why aren't you giving me the version of you I'm used to? This is when the temptation arises to reassure them, to soften the edges of your transformation so they don't feel threatened. You will feel the old reflex to make yourself smaller, more palatable, easier to digest. But if you pay attention, you will realize that you have outgrown the need to be understood by everyone. The ones who are meant to walk with you into this next chapter will not require you to shrink to keep their comfort intact. They will not demand that you explain why you can no longer tolerate what you used to accept. They will sense your spirit's migration and trust that it is holy. Even if it is inconvenient, this is the sacred tension of becoming. You are still here. But you are also not. You are present but not available in the same way. Your energy no longer volunteers itself to be consumed by people who only loved you when you stayed small. At first, this will feel disorienting. You will wonder if you're being cold, if you're abandoning them, if you're betraying some unspoken agreement. But look closer. You will see that you are not abandoning love. You are abandoning the contracts that required you to betray yourself in order to be loved. There is a difference. They can feel it, even if they don't have the words for it, even if they pretend not to notice. They sense your sovereignty, the way you are reclaiming your energy from all the places you left it behind. And some will feel relief, because your courage will remind them of their own longing to grow. But others will feel exposed, because your evolution reveals their refusal to change, and that is not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for their discomfort. You are not obligated to keep performing a version of yourself that no longer feels true. You are allowed to step back without explaining. You are allowed to grow beyond the narratives that kept you small. It is not unkind to honor your transformation, and it is not cruel to let people feel the consequences of your authenticity, because you have spent enough of your life protecting everyone else from the truth of who you are. You have sacrificed your peace to maintain illusions that served no one's highest good. Let them feel it now. Let them feel the space where your compliance used to be. Let them sit with the discomfort of realizing that they never truly knew you, only the version of you that was willing to fit into their story. This is not punishment. This is clarity. And though you may feel guilt rising in your chest, remember you are not here to be consumed. You are not here to be convenient. You are here to be whole. They will feel you leaving long before you pack your things, because spirit always departs before the body does. Because truth always expands beyond the walls built to contain it. And that is as it should be. When you feel their confusion, their sadness, even their resentment, breathe. You do not need to absorb it. You do not need to contort yourself to relieve it. You are allowed to let it be theirs, because your journey is not about proving your goodness to those who only loved your smallness. It is about answering the call that has been echoing in your soul since before you had language for it. They can feel it, and maybe in time, they will understand it. But even if they don't, you are still free to go. You don't remember the exact moment you began to pull away. It didn't happen in a dramatic rupture or a loud declaration. It began quietly, like a tide shifting direction far beneath the surface. A subtle withdrawal of your energy, a slow unthreading of your need to belong. You thought perhaps no one would notice if you simply went quiet, if you stopped raising your hand to volunteer, if you answered with gentle brevity instead of eager elaboration. But the truth is, your silence has become louder than any words you could have spoken. In your quiet departure, you discovered something you had forgotten: how much of your presence had been given away as a currency to keep the peace. How many times you had filled the gaps in other people's stories, making yourself indispensable so you wouldn't have to face the terror of being unneeded. How often you had given more of yourself than you had, because their comfort felt more important than your wholeness. But something sacred has shifted. You no longer feel compelled to pour yourself out to fill the empty spaces. You no longer rush to soothe every discomfort or explain away every tension. You no longer carry the burden of keeping everyone else's world in balance. And yes, they feel it. They feel your quiet departure, even if they pretend not to notice. They feel it in the absence of your constant affirmation, in the way you no longer soften your voice to make your truth easier to swallow. They feel it in your unhurried responses, in the way your eyes no longer search for approval before you speak. You have stopped offering your spirit as a sacrifice on the altar of their expectations. And this is why the room feels different now. This is why the air seems heavier when you walk in, why the conversations lose their easy flow, because you are no longer holding the scaffolding in place, because your energy was the invisible glue that kept everyone else comfortable in their illusions. You are not trying to punish them. You are not trying to create distance for the sake of proving anything. You are simply no longer willing to stay in a place that demands your suppression as the cost of your acceptance. This is what a quiet departure looks like. Not a storming exit, not an argument or a fight, just the steady reclamation of all the pieces of yourself you left behind in exchange for belonging. You may still feel the urge to explain yourself. You may still imagine the conversations where you offer a thorough account of why you have grown too restless to remain, but you don't owe anyone that performance. Your absence speaks with an honesty words rarely match. Some will call you distant, some will label you cold, some will decide that your quiet departure is proof you were never loyal to begin with. But they don't see all the ways you tried to stay. All the nights you wrestled with your own longing for more. All the mornings you woke with a heaviness in your chest, trying to convince yourself that it was enough to simply endure. You stayed longer than you should have because you loved them. You gave more chances than you had to spare because your heart was soft. You held your tongue when you wanted to speak, and you smiled when you wanted to weep. You performed loyalty at the expense of your own peace. And still, it was not enough to quiet the truth rising in you. Because the truth is that love is not meant to be a prison, and loyalty is not the same as self-abandonment, and you were never required to trade your freedom for someone else's comfort. So here you are, no longer pretending, no longer overcompensating, no longer dimming the light of your spirit to keep the shadows from feeling expiated. It feels strange. At first, this spaciousness where your old compulsions used to be, you will be tempted to fill it with new distractions, new entanglements, new performances, but don't. Let the emptiness remain. Let it teach you that you are still whole, even when you are no longer everything to everyone. This is how the quiet departure becomes an initiation, how the slow retreat from old patterns becomes the gateway to something more honest. You are not disappearing. You are just becoming too true to be everywhere you used to be. And though some will resent you for it, others will silently bless your courage, because your quiet departure gives them permission to consider their own. There is nothing more powerful than a soul who stops apologizing for its own evolution. There is nothing more contagious than a spirit who no longer bargains with belonging. So if you find yourself in the spaces where your energy used to pour out like water, and you feel the impulse to explain or defend or justify, pause. Breathe. Remember that you are allowed to leave without a speech. You are allowed to grow without an audience. They will feel your departure. They will feel the sudden absence of your invisible labor. They will feel the weight of all the ways you used to make it easier for them to avoid their own reflection. And while it may feel like rejection to them, you know the truth. This is reverence. You are honoring the God who made you by no longer settling for less than the fullness of what you are. You are honoring your calling by no longer consenting to environments that cannot hold your expansion. And though your departure is quiet, it is final. Because once you have tasted the freedom of no longer performing, you can never go back to the smallness you once called safety. Let them feel it. Let them wonder. Let them learn what it means to finally meet you in your wholeness. Or not at all. It takes time to understand just how much of your life was shaped by the illusion of belonging. How many choices you made simply because you were afraid of standing alone. You remember all the ways you convinced yourself it was easier to fit into the mold they offered you than to risk stepping beyond it and facing the ache of separation. You became so skilled at adapting that you began to believe the roles you played were your true self. But underneath the practiced smile, beneath the polished story of who you were supposed to be, your spirit always knew. There was always a quiet awareness that something essential was being traded away each time you chose acceptance over authenticity. And now that awareness refuses to be silenced. The illusion of belonging is seductive because it promises relief from loneliness. It promises applause, approval, connection, but it demands a price. It asks you to leave parts of yourself at the door, your questions, your longings, your unedited truth. It asks you to perform a version of love that looks like compliance. For a long time, you paid that price without question. You learned to read the room, to anticipate what others needed you to be. You became fluent in the language of accommodation, softening your opinions, dimming your intensity, hiding the parts of you that felt too inconvenient for the spaces you inhabited. And in return, you received a fragile sense of belonging, the kind that evaporates the moment you stop performing, the kind that feels more like possession than partnership, the kind that requires you to remain small to keep everyone else comfortable. It is not until you begin to withdraw from this performance that you understand how little of you was ever truly seen. You start to notice how often your worth was measured by how little space you took up, by how effortlessly you fit into the shape someone else carved for you. You feel the grief of realizing that the version of you they loved was never all of you. This grief is holy. It is the mourning of an old self you no longer have to keep alive. It is the release of a story you outgrew long before you had the courage to admit it. And though it feels heavy, it is the weight that precedes liberation. As you allow yourself to see the illusion clearly, you begin to understand why you stayed so long. You were taught to believe that acceptance was the same as love, that applause was the same as respect, that consensus was the same as connection. But none of those things can sustain a soul committed to truth. There comes a moment in every journey when you must choose between the appearance of belonging and the reality of becoming. When you must decide whether you will continue to sacrifice your spirit on the altar of other people's comfort, or whether you will step into the unknown alone rather than remain untrue to yourself. This is that moment. It does not arrive with fanfare. It does not announce itself with certainty or clarity. It comes disguised as discomfort, as questions you can no longer dismiss, as a heaviness in your chest each time you pretend you don't feel what you feel. You will want to argue with it. You will want to negotiate, promising yourself that you can change just a little bit and still be accepted, that you can keep some part of the illusion intact. But eventually, the cost becomes too high. You realize that no amount of approval is worth the loss of your own aliveness. No applause can compensate for the slow erosion of your integrity. And so you begin the quiet work of disentangling. You stop offering explanations. You stop asking for permission. You stop reaching for the validation that once defined you. At first, it feels like betrayal, because the old stories taught you that your value depended on your willingness to comply. They taught you that to pull away was to abandon love. But you are learning now that real love does not require you to disappear. Real love does not punish your evolution. As you let go of the illusion, You discover that the belonging you were promised was never real if it required your self-rejection. It was always a performance, a fragile contract that could only survive as long as you agreed to keep pretending. You are not pretending anymore, and that is why the air feels clearer, even though you are standing alone. That is why your spirit feels lighter, even as your heart grieves, because you are finally meeting yourself without the mask, finally telling the truth about what you want, what you feel, who you are becoming. Some will call it selfish, some will call it a phase, some will call it disloyalty. Let them. Their definitions are too small for the enormity of your awakening. You are not here to be someone's idea of acceptable. You are here to become the truest version of yourself. You are here to honor the voice inside you that never stopped whispering, even when you were too afraid to listen. The illusion of belonging kept you safe for a time. It taught you how to survive. But you are not here merely to survive. You are here to live in the fullness of your own light, even if it means standing apart. So let the old attachments loosen their hold. Let the grief come, and let it pass through you. Because on the other side of this ending is a beginning you can't yet see but already feel. This is the moment you stop trading your truth for approval. The moment you decide that you would rather walk alone in your authenticity than stay surrounded in your pretense. This is freedom. There is something sacred about the realization that you are set apart. You don't always recognize it at first. You think perhaps you're just sensitive, or that you care too much. You wonder if maybe you're imagining the ways your spirit no longer fits inside the old patterns. But eventually, the truth becomes undeniable. Your life is being rearranged for a purpose you can't yet articulate. You feel it in the quiet hours when no one is watching. The hush that falls over you when you allow yourself to admit you are not satisfied with the shallowness you once accepted. You feel it in the restless longing that wakes you before dawn. The ache that tells you there is something more, something deeper, something truer calling your name. And while you may still try to pretend you are ordinary, your spirit refuses to be convinced. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to be invisible. You were never meant to spend your life performing the same roles simply because they were familiar. Being set apart doesn't mean you are better than anyone else. It doesn't mean you are more worthy of love or more valuable in the eyes of God. It means your path is different. Your lessons are different. Your calling is different. And because of this, you will never feel at home in places that demand your silence. You will never find lasting peace in relationships that require your compliance. You will never feel fulfilled by the rewards that come from betraying your own truth. For a long time, you resisted this knowing. You tried to convince yourself you could be content with what everyone else seemed to want. You told yourself that your dissatisfaction was just impatience or arrogance. But the older you get, the clearer it becomes you were made to disrupt the pattern. You were made to challenge what others accept without question. You were made to embody a deeper love, a fiercer compassion, a truer integrity. And this is why it has always felt so heavy when you've tried to settle. Why your spirit has never allowed you to fully surrender to the numbing comfort of conformity. You are not broken. You are called to leave the familiar shores. Even when no one else understands why you can't just be content. Called to step into spaces that feel too big, too unknown, too demanding of your faith. This is the price of being set apart. You will not always have a map. You will not always have companionship. You will not always be understood, but you will have clarity. And you will have peace, the kind that cannot be manufactured through performance. You are not here to replicate someone else's journey. You are here to follow the thread of your own becoming wherever it leads you. And though it feels lonely, there is a holiness to this solitude, because it is here, in the quiet space between who you were and who you are becoming, that you discover the depths of your own resilience. Here is where you learn to trust that God does not call you without also equipping you, that the discomfort you feel is not a punishment, but a preparation, that the restlessness is not evidence of failure, but the first sign of freedom. When you are set apart, you will be asked to release your need for validation. You will be asked to let go of the praise that once sustained you. You will be asked to walk away from the roles that earned you belonging but cost you your authenticity. This is not cruelty, it is mercy. Because every false belonging must be stripped away before you can discover the belonging that cannot be taken from you. So if you feel yourself being pulled away, trust it. If you feel yourself losing interest in what once captivated you, honor it. If you feel yourself longing for more, follow it. You are being prepared for something that requires all of you, not just the polished parts, not just the agreeable parts, not just the parts that make sense to other people. All of you, your doubts and your faith, your wounds and your gifts, your questions and your convictions. Nothing in you is wasted. Nothing in you is unworthy. Nothing in you is an accident. Being set apart means you will outgrow relationships that can't hold your evolution. It means you will step away from opportunities that look good on paper but feel dead in your spirit. It means you will risk being misunderstood, criticized, and judged by those who prefer the version of you that stayed small. But it also means you will come alive in ways you cannot yet imagine. You will meet people who don't require you to explain your glow. You will find spaces that don't ask you to hide your hunger for depth. You will discover a peace that doesn't depend on other people's permission. You will know, in the marrow of your bones, that you are exactly where you are meant to be. This is the gift of being set apart. It doesn't always feel like a gift in the beginning. It feels like loss, like disorientation, like exile. But one day, you will look back and see that every closed door was a kindness. Every departure was an answered prayer. Every unraveling was the first step toward your liberation. So let it happen. Let yourself be set apart. Let yourself be remade. You are not here to be contained. You are here to become. There is a heaviness that descends when you start to realize how much of your life has been shaped by other people's expectations. You carry it quietly, like an invisible yoke across your shoulders, this unspoken agreement to keep everyone comfortable, to be what they needed you to be, to never disrupt the delicate balance of their own insecurities. You did it for so long you forgot there was another way to live. You forgot what it felt like to wake up and not immediately calculate which version of yourself would be most acceptable to the room you were about to enter. The weight of expectations is subtle at first. It comes disguised as obligation, as responsibility, as loyalty. You tell yourself you're just being considerate, just being kind, just making things easier for everyone else. But one day you wake up and realize that you have been living a life composed almost entirely of compromises. That somewhere along the line you began to mistake other people's preferences for your purpose. And when that moment comes, when the truth finally pierces the fog of your old conditioning, you will feel a grief so sharp it takes your breath away. Because you will see, maybe for the first time, how many times you said yes when everything in you was begging you to say no. How many times you swallowed your own instincts because you were afraid of disappointing them. They never had to say it outright. The expectations were woven into every conversation, every compliment, every disapproving glance. They were coded into the subtle cues of what was praised and what was punished. You learned quickly what would earn you approval and what would threaten the connection you so desperately needed. And because you are sensitive, because you are intuitive, because you care so deeply, you adapted. You became the person they could rely on to stay predictable, to stay agreeable, to stay small. But here's the truth: you are no longer able to deny no one benefits from your self-betrayal, not even the ones who claim to love you most, because a love that requires your constant contortion is not love. It is convenience. A love that only thrives when you suppress your truth is not love. It is control. And the longer you carry the weight of everyone's expectation, the further you drift from the quiet knowing of who you really are. It's no wonder you feel tired all the time. No wonder your joy feels thin, your enthusiasm forced. You have been carrying more than your share, managing other people's emotions while neglecting your own. But there is another way. It begins the moment you decide that your peace matters more than their approval, that your alignment matters more than their comfort, that your becoming is worth whatever misunderstandings it may create. This is not an easy choice. The weight of expectations has been with you for so long it feels like part of your own body. Setting it down feels unnatural at first, like losing a limb you forgot you didn't need to survive. You will feel guilt. You will feel fear. You will feel the old reflex to apologize for wanting more. But you will also feel something else, something you haven't felt in years, maybe ever. Relief. The relief of no longer having to pretend. The relief of no longer performing the version of yourself that everyone else decided was palatable. The relief of feeling the weight slip from your shoulders and realizing that you can stand taller without it. And in that space where the burden used to be, you will find the first flicker of true freedom. Freedom to say no without justification. Freedom to step away without guilt. Freedom to trust your own intuition more than anyone else's expectations. At first, it will feel like you are disappointing everyone, like you are breaking 1,000 unspoken contracts all at once. And maybe you are. But sometimes contracts have to be broken because they were never written in good faith. The people who loved you only for your compliance will not celebrate your liberation. They will call you selfish. They will call you ungrateful. They will call you disloyal. Let them. You are not here to be understood by those who refuse to do their own work. You are not here to be small enough to keep others from confronting their own limitations. You are here to live, to breathe, to embody the fullness of your spirit without apology. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, that is their discomfort to hold. You have carried enough. It is time to put the weight down. Time to trust that the ones who are meant for you will find you in your authenticity, not in your performance. Time to believe that God did not create you to spend your life in the prison of other people's expectations. You were made for freedom. You were made for purpose. You were made to walk in alignment with your own soul. Even if it means walking away from every place that demanded you leave yourself behind. This is the season of releasing the burden, of stepping out from under the heavy canopy of everyone else's desires. And though you will grieve, though you will question, though you will ache, you will also discover a lightness you have never known, because nothing is heavier than a life that is not your own, and nothing is more holy than finally deciding to reclaim it. You start to see them everywhere, the unspoken contracts that have governed your relationships, your choices, your identity. They were never written down, never signed in ink, but you honored them all the same, out of fear, out of love, out of the hope that if you kept your side of the silent agreement, you would finally feel safe. These contracts sound like this: I will not outshine you. I will not question you. I will not ask for more than you're willing to give. I will not reveal the truth if it threatens your comfort. I will not grow beyond what you can understand. And in exchange, you will not leave me. It's so subtle you almost don't notice how much you've sacrificed. The slow erosion of your own voice, the gradual dimming of your own desires, the steady retreat of your spirit until you can no longer find the edges of who you once were. But eventually, your body begins to protest. Your heart begins to ache in ways you can no longer dismiss as normal. You wake up in the morning with a heaviness that feels less like sadness and more like suffocation. And still you try to keep your end of the bargain. You smile when you feel hollow. You nod when you want to scream. You agree when everything in you is begging you to say no. Until finally, the truth you have been trying to outrun catches up with you. You are not here to live a life built on unspoken contracts you never consented to. You are not here to maintain the illusions that keep other people from facing their own work. You are not here to dim your light so no one else feels exposed. This realization is both liberating and terrifying, because when you decide to stop honoring these contracts, everything starts to shake. People will look at you with confusion. They will wonder why the person they counted on to be so agreeable, so accommodating, so easy is suddenly telling the truth, suddenly setting boundaries, suddenly choosing herself. And if you are not prepared, you will mistake their discomfort for a sign that you are doing something wrong. But you are not doing anything wrong. You are simply refusing to participate in dynamics that demanded your silence as the price of belonging. These unspoken contracts never served your highest good. They only served to keep you contained. And though you will feel guilt, it is only because you have been trained to believe that self-abandonment is a virtue, that martyrdom is love, that being needed is the same as being cherished. But you are learning that love is not measured by how much of yourself you are willing to erase. Real love is spacious. Real love does not require you to make yourself small so someone else can feel big. Real love does not ask you to suppress your instincts so someone else can avoid their discomfort. And anything less than that is not love, it is dependency masquerading as devotion. When you start to withdraw your consent from these old agreements, you will feel the tension rise. The people who benefited from your compliance will not applaud your awakening. They will remind you of who you used to be. They will recite all the ways you used to say yes. They will bring up every time you prioritize them over yourself. As if your old sacrifices are proof that you are obligated to keep making them. But hear me clearly, you owe no one the version of you that needed their approval to feel worthy. You are allowed to change the terms. You are allowed to reclaim your energy. You are allowed to stop performing. This is not betrayal. This is integrity. And the longer you stay in rooms that only welcome the parts of you willing to disappear, the further you drift from the life you were created to live. So let the contracts dissolve. Let the illusions crumble. Let the discomfort rise and crest and break. Because on the other side of this unraveling is the clarity you've been longing for. You will see who loves you for your essence, not your compliance. You will see who values your presence when it is whole, not when it is edited for their convenience. And yes, you will lose people. You will lose opportunities. You will lose the fragile safety that came from being easy to digest. But what you will gain is worth every loss. You will gain your own respect. You will gain the trust of your own soul. You will gain the peace that comes from no longer bargaining with your own light. This is what happens when you stop signing unspoken contracts you remember that you never needed to be managed into belonging. You were worthy before you ever learned to perform. And though it will take time, you will come to see that the spaces you lose were never really yours. They belong to the version of you willing to trade her authenticity for acceptance. You are not that person anymore. And the ones who are meant for you will never ask you to be. So walk forward, even if your steps are shaky. Walk forward, even if your voice trembles, because every time you choose your own alignment over their expectations, you are declaring to God, to yourself, to the universe, I will no longer abandon myself to belong. I will no longer betray myself to keep the peace. I will no longer pretend that love requires my extinction. I am free. There comes a day when you realize you've been waiting for permission that will never come, waiting for someone else to say it's okay to change, okay to grow, okay to leave the old roles behind a seat. You spent years hoping for a blessing, for an endorsement, for a gentle nod that would ease your guilt. But you are beginning to see that no one else can authorize your liberation. Permission to transform is something you must claim for yourself. It starts in the quiet places, those late nights when your chest tightens with the awareness that you are no longer satisfied pretending. The early mornings when your spirit feels restless and your thoughts spiral around the question you've been trying not to ask. What if I am meant for more than this? You hush the question at first. You remind yourself of your responsibilities, of your promises, of the countless ways you've built your life around other people's needs. You tell yourself it would be selfish to want something else, that you should be grateful for what you have. But no matter how often you recite these justifications, the question does not disappear. It grows, it expands, it presses against your ribs until you can no longer breathe around it. And then, in a moment that feels both terrifying and undeniable, you hear the quiet voice in you say, "It is time. Time to stop deferring your own becoming. Time to stop waiting for validation from people whose approval depends on your stagnation. Time to stop pretending you don't feel what you feel." Permission is not something anyone else can give you, because no one else lives in your heart. No one else carries your dream. No one else will bear the cost of your continued self-abandonment. Only you can decide to trust the knowing inside you more than the expectations around you. At first, this feels like rebellion, like a betrayal of everything you were taught to revere. But slowly, as you begin to allow yourself to tell the truth, you realize it is not rebellion, it is reclamation. Reclaiming your right to change your mind. Reclaiming your right to want something deeper. Reclaiming your right to honor the stirrings of your spirit. Even if no one else understands them, you are not here to be frozen in a version of yourself that makes everyone else comfortable. You are not here to spend your one precious life proving that you can endure what depletes you. You are here to grow, to evolve, to follow the path that calls you even when it leads you away from everything familiar. This is your permission slip, the ache you feel in your chest when you try to shrink, the fatigue that sets in when you perform a happiness you no longer believe. The longing that refuses to die no matter how many times you bury it. These are not symptoms of selfishness. They are invitations. They are reminders that you were made for more than survival. They are evidence that your spirit is alive, refusing to settle for the shallow comfort of fitting in. And yes, there will be people who do not understand, people who will feel threatened by your transformation. People who will accuse you of arrogance or ingratitude. Let them. Their confusion is not yours to solve. Their discomfort is not yours to soothe. You have spent enough time tending to everyone else's needs while ignoring your own. You have spent enough years dimming your light so no one would feel overshadowed. It is time to choose yourself. Not in the shallow way the world sometimes frames self-love, but in the sacred way that honors the God who created you to expand. When you grant yourself permission to transform, you will feel the earth shift beneath your feet. You will feel the old illusions begin to crack. You will feel the sorrow of leaving behind everything that once felt safe. But you will also feel something else. A quiet strength rising in your bones, a clarity that does not require proof or consensus. A peace that comes from finally telling the truth. You will learn that you do not have to explain your becoming to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You do not have to translate your transformation into a language they are unwilling to learn. You are allowed to grow without apology. You are allowed to want something different. You are allowed to walk away from what no longer nourishes your soul. And the people who are meant to walk beside you will not need you to remain unchanged. They will not ask you to betray yourself to reassure them. They will celebrate your evolution because they are committed to their own. But first, you must give yourself permission. Permission to disappoint the expectations that were never yours to carry. Permission to grieve the loss of old identities. Permission to trust that your desires are not mistakes but maps leading you home. It will not be easy. You will feel guilt and fear and sorrow. You will feel moments of doubt so intense you will wonder if you made it all up. But beneath all that noise, there will be a deeper knowing you are finally honoring the life that was meant for you. This is the holiest kind of courage, to choose your own alignment over the comfort of your disguise. So take a breath. Place your hand over your heart and speak this truth out loud if you dare. I give myself permission to transform. No one else needs to agree. No one else needs to understand. No one else needs to approve. This is your life, and you are finally free to live it. You would think that expansion would feel purely exhilarating, that growing beyond the limits you once accepted would be all liberation and gratitude. But no one tells you about the discomfort of it. No one warns you that sometimes becoming more of yourself feels like losing everything you thought you needed to survive. You are not just shifting your mindset, you are reordering the entire architecture of your life. The foundations you built on compromise and approval are trembling under the force of your truth. And though you know this change is necessary, it does not feel gentle. It feels like standing in the wreckage of all your old stories, like holding the broken pieces of your former identity in your hands and wondering who you will be without them. And in those moments when the discomfort is raw and you feel exposed in ways you never have before, you may be tempted to go back, to retreat into the familiarity of your old patterns, to make yourself small again because at least smallness was predictable. But listen to me. The discomfort you feel is not a sign that you are off track. It is evidence that you are finally outgrowing the cages you once mistook for shelter. It is normal to grieve in this space between the old and the new, to look around at the life you once built and feel sorrow for the way it no longer fits, to mourn the relationships that cannot hold your expansion, to feel the ache of a loneliness you didn't expect. You will have days when you wonder if it would have been easier to stay asleep, to keep playing the roles that won you approval, to keep performing the version of yourself that everyone else understood. But easier is not the same as sacred. Familiar is not the same as true. And no matter how uncomfortable it feels to stretch beyond your old edges, you cannot unknow what you now know. You cannot force your spirit to unlearn the taste of freedom. This is the discomfort of expansion. You can see too much to pretend anymore. You can feel too much to stay silent. You can hope for too much to settle. And though your mind will try to convince you that this pain means you've made a mistake, your heart knows better. Your heart knows that this is what growth requires: a willingness to stand in the mess, in the unknown, in the ache, and trust that something truer is being born. You are being called to hold space for the both and of transformation, The grief and the gratitude, the sorrow and the wonder, the fear and the faith, because real growth is not tidy. It does not happen in neat, organized steps. It comes in waves that crash against your old life and erode everything that cannot withstand your becoming. And it will feel like too much sometimes. You will feel tired in a way that rest cannot fix. You will feel tender in a way that makes the world seem sharper than before. You will feel disoriented because all the familiar markers of who you were are dissolving. This is what it costs to reclaim your wholeness, to stop apologizing for your hunger, to stop diminishing your gifts, to stop pretending that you are satisfied with a life built on someone else's blueprint. And while the discomfort may feel like punishment, it is actually the evidence that your spirit is alive. Because numbness is the currency of a life lived in suppression, and you are no longer willing to be numb. So let the discomfort do its work. Let it strip away the illusions you clung to. Let it teach you that you can survive the ache of becoming. Because on the other side of this discomfort is a spaciousness you have never known. A spaciousness where you don't have to edit yourself to be loved. A spaciousness where your joy doesn't feel conditional. A spaciousness where your peace is not contingent on everyone else's acceptance. You will not arrive there overnight. You will have moments when you slip back into your old patterns, moments when you doubt your worth, moments when you long for the ease of your former life. But each time you choose to stay in the discomfort instead of abandoning yourself, you are strengthening a new foundation, a foundation built not on compliance but on integrity, not on appeasement but on truth, not on the illusion of safety but on the reality of alignment. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to be too much. You are allowed to want more. And if that desire disrupts the comfort of those who preferred your smaller self, so be it. This is the season of your expansion. And yes, it is uncomfortable. Yes, it is disorienting. Yes, it is lonely. But it is also holy. It is also necessary. It is also the beginning of everything you have been praying for. So breathe. Feel the ache. Let the discomfort remind you that you are alive, and trust that this stretching is not your undoing. It is your becoming. You knew, somewhere deep inside, that alignment would have a cost. You just didn't realize how high it would be. No one tells you that choosing to honor your truth means letting go of everything built on your silence. That when you finally decide to stop contorting yourself, the life you constructed out of compromise will begin to fall apart. At first, you try to negotiate. You tell yourself you can keep parts of the old world intact. That you can hold on to relationships that depend on your compliance. That you can maintain the familiar rhythms of a life you have outgrown. But alignment is uncompromising. It will not allow you to keep what is no longer real. It will not bless what requires your self-abandonment to survive. And when you finally surrender to this truth, the reckoning begins. People will notice that you no longer rush to reassure them, that your voice has changed. Steady with a conviction that does not need approval to feel true. That your eyes no longer flicker with the desperation to be understood. They will feel the difference in the way you hold your boundaries, the way you say no without elaborate justification, the way you walk away without guilt. Some will feel threatened by this new steadiness. They will accuse you of arrogance, of selfishness, of betrayal. They will try to remind you of the unspoken contracts you signed, contracts that said you would always make yourself smaller so they could feel bigger. But you are learning that their disappointment is not evidence you've done something wrong. It is simply the natural consequence of choosing alignment over appeasement. And though this knowing brings relief, it does not take away the ache, because there is a cost to alignment. There is a cost to choosing your integrity over their expectations. a cost to telling the truth when everyone around you is committed to the lie. You will lose relationships you thought would last forever. You will lose opportunities you once believed were essential to your success. You will lose the illusion that you could belong to everyone if you just tried hard enough. But what you gain in return is priceless. You gain your own respect. You gain the trust of your spirit. You gain the peace that comes from no longer fragmenting yourself to be digestible. And over time, you will begin to see that any connection requiring your suppression was never a connection at all. It was an arrangement, a transaction, a bargain you made because you didn't yet believe you were enough on your own. The cost of alignment is real. It is not sentimental. It is not theoretical. It will show up in your bank account, in your calendar, in the quiet hours when you feel the loneliness of walking away. But you will learn to let it cost you. Because every time you pay this price, you reclaim a piece of yourself you once gave away. And no matter how high the price, there is nothing more expensive than staying out of alignment. Staying out of alignment costs you your peace. It costs you your clarity. It costs you the precious, unrepeatable days of your life. Days you spend pretending, performing, compromising. Days you never get back. So let it cost you. Let it cost you the relationships that only worked because you were willing to stay small. Let it cost you the opportunities that required your slants. Let it cost you the false security that came from being acceptable to everyone. Because alignment is worth every loss, it is worth every ending. It is worth every awkward conversation and every uncomfortable departure. Because when you choose alignment, you choose freedom. Freedom from the exhaustion of trying to be everything to everyone. Freedom from the constant anxiety that someone will discover you don't actually agree with the roles you've been playing. Freedom to finally stand in your own life without apology. And yes, you will grieve. You will grieve the life you built on your old agreements. You will grieve the version of yourself who believed she had to be small to be sick. You will grieve the ease of fitting in, even if it was always an illusion. But this grief is clean. It does not rot your spirit from the inside. It does not ask you to abandon yourself to keep the peace. It simply asks you to feel it all, the sorrow and the relief, the fear and the exhilaration, to honor the cost, to accept that nothing worth having comes without consequence. Because this is what real freedom requires, the willingness to lose what was never meant for you. And in the quiet that follows, you will hear the sound of your own heart beating in rhythm with the truth. You will know, in a way that does not require proof or validation, that you are finally living the life you were born to claim. No more bargaining, no more disguises, no more apologizing for the depth of your hunger. This is alignment, and it is worth everything. As you continue to step into your own alignment, something remarkable happens. The people around you start to reveal themselves, often in ways you never expected. Some become softer, drawn to the quiet certainty that glows from you when you stop performing. But others become restless, agitated by your refusal to mirror back the story they've told about themselves. Relationships are mirrors, and as you grow, your presence becomes a reflection that not everyone is ready to face. Your evolution calls their avoidance into question. Your honesty shines light on the places where they are still hiding. At first, you will take this personally. You will think it's your fault that things feel tense. You will replay conversations trying to figure out what you said or did wrong. But eventually, you will understand that their reactions have less to do with you than with what your transformation confronts in them. Your commitment to truth reveals where they are still invested in the lie. Your willingness to expand exposes their decision to remain unchanged. Your peace disrupts their need for chaos to feel normal. And while it is tempting to shrink yourself so they don't have to feel this discomfort, you are learning that this is not compassion, it's collusion. You were never meant to play small to protect other people from their own reflection. This is the price of becoming a mirror. Some people will move closer because your courage inspires them to look honestly at their own lives. They will thank you, sometimes with words and sometimes with silent gratitude, for showing them what is possible. But others will distance themselves. They will look away. They will insist you've changed too much, that you've become hard, selfish, unrecognizable. Let them. Their judgment is not your responsibility to heal. You will see the truth in new ways now. You will see how many of your old connections were built not on mutual respect but on mutual avoidance. You will see how many conversations were just rehearsals of the same tired narratives. How many bonds were simply agreements never to challenge each other. And as you allow yourself to be honest, you will feel both grief and relief in equal measure. Grief for the loss of the closeness you thought you had. Relief that you no longer have to pretend. This is the paradox of transformation. It both clarifies and disrupts. It reveals who is truly with you, and who was only with the version of you willing to remain small. You will feel the sting of being misunderstood. You will feel the ache of being resented for your freedom, but you will also feel the joy of finally inhabiting your own life without disguise. Your mirror does not just reflect what is broken. It also reflects what is possible. And the ones who are meant for you will recognize themselves in your light. They will see your authenticity not as a threat but as an invitation to step out of their own hiding places, an invitation to stop pretending, an invitation to claim the life their spirit has been whispering about in the quiet hours. You do not have to force this. You do not have to convince anyone to come with you. You do not have to justify the way your transformation makes other people uncomfortable. Your only responsibility is to keep becoming. Keep telling the truth. Keep honoring the integrity of your own soul, because you spent enough years shaping yourself into what other people could accept. You spent enough time colluding with avoidance because it felt safer than being alone. But you are learning that loneliness is not the same as aloneness. Loneliness is what you feel when you abandon yourself to belong. Aloneness is what you feel when you finally choose to be real, even if it means standing apart. And as painful as it is, you will come to see that you would rather be alone in your truth than surrounded in your pretense. Because when you are honest, you make space for others to be honest too. When you stop performing, you give other people permission to lay down their own masks. And though some will choose to keep hiding, others will step into the light with you. These are the ones you have been waiting for. The ones who do not require your diminishment to feel secure. The ones who see your glow and say, "Yes, me too." This is the quiet revolution of authenticity. It does not require a speech or a manifesto. It simply requires your willingness to stand in the mirror of your own life without flinching, to let the reflections fall where they may, to trust that those who are meant for you will not be threatened by your freedom, but drawn to it. You are not here to be a projection screen for other people's fears. You are here to be a living reminder of what is possible when you stop bargaining with your own light. So let the mirrors do their work. Let the truth be seen. Let the discomfort because you are no longer available for relationships that depend on your self-betrayal. You are here to be a mirror, and you are finally clear enough to reflect. There is a point in every transformation when you must withdraw from the noise, when you must step back from the familiar rhythms and expectations that kept you busy enough to avoid the truth. This is the sacred cocoon, the space where the old stories dissolve and the new self begins to take shape. At first, it feels like exile, like something has been taken from you. You look around and wonder where everyone went, why the invitations have stopped, why the energy you once shared so freely has retreated into the quiet. But this is not abandonment. This is incubation. The cocoon is the place where you are no longer who you were, but not yet who you are becoming. It is a threshold, a liminal chamber, a holy pause, and it can feel like death, because so much is falling away. The relationships you clung to out of habit, the identities you performed for safety, the ambitions you chased because someone told you they mattered. All of it begins to unravel in this quiet space. And though you may feel tempted to rush past the discomfort to fill the silence with new distractions or old habits, something wiser in you knows this pause is necessary. It is here in the stillness that you can finally hear your own voice. Here that you can feel what has been asking for your attention beneath all the busyness. Here that you can grieve without performing your grief for an audience. No one can do this part for you. No one can sit inside your cocoon and hold your hand through every wave of sorrow and revelation. This is your work, your passage, your alchemy. And though it may feel lonely, you are not alone. God meets you here. Spirit meets you here. Your own soul meets you here, with a tenderness you have spent your whole life searching for in other people. In this space, you will learn to differentiate between what was chosen for you and what you are choosing for yourself. You will see how many of your decisions were driven by the fear of disappointing others. How many of your sacrifices were made to earn love you already deserved. How many of your dreams were inherited, not inspired. And it will hurt. It will feel like betrayal to admit that so much of your life was built on agreements you never truly wanted. But this honesty is the first step toward freedom, because once you see clearly, you cannot go back to pretending. You cannot unknow what you know now. You cannot force yourself to fit back into the old roles, no matter how much you wish you could. The cocoon is a place of surrender, a place where you stop trying to manage the perceptions of others and start tending to the truth inside you. It is where you gather the scattered pieces of your energy and call them home, where you learn to be with yourself without judgment, where you remember that your worth is not dependent on your usefulness to others. It is here, in the quiet, that you will feel the old attachments loosening their grip. You will feel the stories you inherited dissolving. You will feel the tender emergence of a self you have only glimpsed in your most honest moments. And though the cocoon feels like confinement, it is actually preparation, a necessary contraction before the expansion that is coming. This is not the end of your story. It is the sacred interlude, the pause between exhale and inhale, the fertile darkness where the seeds of your next season are taking root. Do not rush this process. Do not shame yourself for needing this time apart. Do not judge the slowness of your becoming. Transformation is not efficient. It is not linear. It is not predictable. It requires everything false to be stripped away so that only the essential remains. And that stripping is tender work. Some days you will feel strong, clear, grateful. Other days you will feel like you are losing yourself completely. Both are true. Both are holy. This is what it means to be remade, to trust that what is dissolving is not your life, but your illusions. To believe that what is emerging is not a stranger, but the truest version of you. So let yourself rest here. Let yourself grieve here. Let yourself hope here. Let yourself be changed here. You are in the cocoon because you are loved, not because you are forgotten. You are in the cocoon because you are ready, not because you are failing. And when it is time to emerge, you will know, not because someone gives you permission, but because your own spirit will whisper it is time, and you will rise, not as the person you were, but as the person you were always meant to become. No trumpets will sound when you decide to leave. No banners will wave. No crowd will gather to cheer you on as you slip quietly out of the old story. This is the silent exodus, the departure that requires no announcement, no validation, no performance. For years, you imagined this moment would be loud. You thought you'd have to fight your way free to prove your reasons, to defend your longing for something more. You rehearsed the speeches in your mind, the long explanations you would offer to justify why you could no longer stay. But when the moment finally arrives, it does not require any of that. It simply requires your willingness to stop pretending. You find that your spirit has already left the places where your body still lingers. You are no longer invested in convincing anyone to understand. You are no longer interested in bargaining for acceptance you do not need. This is the quietest kind of freedom, the kind that slips in when you are finally ready to let go without resentment, without drama, without needing anyone else to bless your departure. You will feel the old ties tugging at you, pulling at the edges of your resolve. The memories will rise like ghosts, whispering that you once belonged here, that you once found comfort in these walls. And it is true. You did belong once. You did find comfort here once. But belonging is not the same as becoming, and comfort is not the same as purpose. When you finally accept this, something shifts. You stop fighting the gravity of your own evolution. You stop apologizing for the way your spirit has outgrown what used to sustain it. And in that surrender, you feel something you haven't felt in years: relief. Relief that you no longer have to keep explaining yourself. Relief that you no longer have to keep performing the version of you that made everyone else feel secure. Relief that you no longer have to stay in places your soul has already left. This is the silent exodus, and though no one may see the moment you cross the threshold, everything in you knows you will never return the same. Some will sense it without words. They will feel your absence even while you are still in the same room. They will notice that your laughter no longer sounds like consent, that your silence no longer signals agreement. They will feel the power in your stillness, the quiet conviction in your gaze, and it will make them uncomfortable. Because when you stop dimming, the light reveals everything: your truth, their fear, the unspoken contracts you are no longer willing to uphold. You do not have to defend this. You do not have to soften the impact of your departure. You do not have to offer explanations that make your leaving easier to digest. Some endings are meant to be ambiguous. Some transitions require you to walk away without a backward glance, not out of spite, but out of reverence for the life waiting on the other side of your obedience. And though you will grieve, though you will feel the ache of severing ties, you will also feel something deeper: the integrity of knowing you are finally telling the truth. You are no longer available for dynamics that require your betrayal. You are no longer invested in proving your worth to people who cannot see it. You are no longer willing to sacrifice your aliveness to protect someone else's comfort. This is not rebellion. It is reclamation. It is the quiet retrieval of everything you gave away in your quest to belong. Your joy, your curiosity, your brilliance, your voice. All of it returning to you now as you step across the invisible threshold. And yes, it is lonely here at first. Yes, you will feel the emptiness that comes when you leave behind the familiar noise. But slowly you will realize that this emptiness is not a void. It is space. Space for your spirit to stretch. Space for your truth to breathe. Space for new relationships to form around the person you are becoming, not the persona you performed. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to earn, nothing left to justify. Your leaving is its own declaration. I am no longer available for a life that asks me to disappear. I am no longer willing to negotiate the terms of my existence. I am no longer afraid of what will happen when I stop pretending. And in that declaration, everything shifts. You do not need to slam the door. You do not need to scorch the earth. You simply need to walk away with your integrity intact. Because this is the silent exodus, the moment you realize you are already gone. The moment you trust that what is waiting for you requires your full presence, not your partial loyalty. The moment you know that no amount of nostalgia is worth sacrificing your becoming. So let them feel your absence. Let them wonder. Let them create their own stories about why you had to leave. You do not owe them an epilogue. You do not owe them a version of you that no longer exists. You owe yourself the courage to keep walking, even when no one claps, even when no one understands, even when the silence feels impossibly loud. Because sometimes the quietest exits are the most revolutionary, and sometimes the most sacred departures are the ones you make without a sound. There is a moment when all the quiet endings give way to a different kind of knowing. A moment when the grief of leaving transforms into the clarity of stepping forward. You stand on the far side of everything you have released, every role, every contract, every story that no longer fits, and you feel something you haven't felt in longer than you can remember: readiness. You are not fully certain what comes next. No map has been delivered to your door. No angel has appeared to lay out the details of your destiny. But even in the absence of clear directions, you sense it in your bones. This is the threshold you were born to cross. This is the place where the path unfolds, not because you can see it, but because you finally trust yourself enough to walk it. You will still feel the ache of all you have left behind. There will be mornings when you wake and forget, for a moment, that you are no longer bound by those old agreements. You will feel the reflex to reach for the familiar habits of self-suppression. The muscle memory of staying small will tug at you, inviting you to return to what is known. But you are learning to pause in those moments, to take a breath, to remember that you are not obligated to re-enter the rooms you have outgrown. You have spent enough time living in the shadows of your own life, enough time proving that you could be unthreatening, agreeable, convenient, but you were not made to be hidden. You were not made to be tolerated. You were not made to spend your days rehearsing the same performance just so others would never have to change. You were made to be free, and freedom, you are discovering, is less about the absence of obstacles and more about the presence of self. It is the quiet confidence that arises when you know, without needing evidence, that your worth is not negotiable. It is the unshakable peace that settles in your spirit when you stop asking for permission to exist in your fullness. You are stepping into the calling now, not because you have all the answers, not because you feel ready in every way, but because you have finally decided that your allegiance belongs to the truth inside you, not to the expectations around you. This is what it means to answer the call. It means trusting the voice that has been whispering to you in the dark hours, long before anyone else could hear it. It means believing that your desires are not random, but placed within you for a reason. It means daring to imagine that you are allowed to want a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. And yes, this will cost you. It will cost you the comfort of fitting in. It will cost you the predictability of old patterns. It will cost you the illusion that you can belong everywhere if you just try hard enough. But what you gain is worth every sacrifice. You gain the joy of waking up each day without the heavy burden of pretending. You gain the quiet certainty that you are no longer living someone else's life. You gain the unbreakable trust in your own spirit. And in time, you will discover that you were never as alone as you feared. Because there are others who are also stepping into their callings, others who are shedding old skins and reclaiming their birthright to be whole. You will recognize them by the way their eyes no longer search for permission, by the way their presence feels like an invitation rather than a demand, by the way their energy affirms your own expansion instead of shrinking in response to it. These are your people, the ones who do not ask you to explain your glow, the ones who meet you in the light because they have done the work to find their own. And when you stand among them, you will know every departure was worth it, every tear, every sleepless night, every tremor of doubt. All of it was preparing you for this moment, the moment when you stop asking, "Am I allowed to be this big?" The moment when you stop wondering, "Will they still love me if I no longer make myself small?" The moment when you decide that your only task is to be faithful to your own becoming. This is the holiest kind of growth, the growth that does not apologize for its necessity, the growth that does not shrink itself to make others comfortable, the growth that trusts that what is meant for you will never require your diminishment. So step forward, not because you have something to prove, not because you need to justify all you have lost, but because you have finally remembered who you are. You are not here to be manageable. You are not here to be convenient. You are not here to be contained. You are here to take up space in love, in purpose, in radiant clarity. And though the old rooms may tremble as you go, though the voices of your past may try to pull you back, you are free now. Free to walk into the life that has been waiting for you all along. Free to honor the size of your spirit without apology. Free to become everything you were never allowed to be before. This is your time. Let yourself rise. Let yourself be seen. Let yourself be known. Let yourself be loved, not for how well you stayed small, but for how bravely you decided to expand.